Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Illumineers Quest podcast, where we talk everything Lorcana, not just the critically acclaimed multiplayer game. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jacob.
Thanks for coming on this journey with us. Okay, I feel like it's a chaotic recording day. There's so much going on, and we're sitting here like debating on what all we want to talk about, and it's like, do we talk about this? Do we talk about this? Do we talk about this? Do we talk about this?
I mean, I think my life's been jam-packed as of late, and so has Lorcana been jam-packed as of late, so a little overwhelming, but I'm excited to get into recording today.
Yeah, so today's episode, if you're watching on YouTube, you can already kind of see. If you're listening, we're going to tell it to you now, is the world-famous Illumineers Quest, terribly done, top card tier list. And I say terribly done because there's always that gets something way wrong.
It's always Amber.
I think we've actually gotten a lot better with them. I think last set was pretty solid, if I remember correctly.
I think we always miss an Amber.
We always are. There's always one card for sure that's just like atrocious. But
I think it was
in
Lucky
general,
Dime last time.
I think, but I don't know. Well, you could be right. I don't want to sit there and go on and on about that and have to look everything up. But yeah, top card tier list. You know, the meta has more or less been solidified, especially for Chicago. Starts tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So you got Chicago, and then. I mean, it seems forever away, but sooner rather than later, the set championships are going to be here. And, I don't feel like the meta is going to shift a ton between now and then.
I'm sure there'll be, we have some, I'm sure there'll be one deck that was kind of suspected to come out at some point, but it'll, like, one or two maybe.
Yeah, I really don't think it'll change that much. I think the 4 decks, which we're also recording our meta report after this, so stay tuned for that. If it hasn't already come out, might have already come out. We're doing a meta report as well. We're trying to figure it all out. Like I said, there's a lot to talk about. Anyways, yeah, I think the top 4 decks are pretty much solidified. I think what the biggest meta changes will be is, the way that it seems to work is that you have like the top cards, and those like drive the meta, and then whatever those top decks are, people start putting in like tech cards that deal with those top meta decks. And so I think maybe there will be some like top techie type cards that help, but in general I think we've kind of got a pretty solidified meta here. So with that said, we've got 3 or 4 cards from each of the different colors. A few colors have more, one color has less, but we'll get into all of that and talk through the top cards. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into it. As always, everyone, thanks for the support. Appreciate all the help and time that you all give us. We know that time is very valuable and appreciate all of the time that you guys spend with us and helping us out. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, card of the week, card of the day, card of the month, card of the hour, whatever it is at this point.
Card of the ep.
Card of the episode, yes.
We got Dolores Madrigal.
Dolores Madrigal. Yes, who is also on the tier list. So we'll talk a little bit about her, but I think it's one of the newer options that is starting to see a lot more play.
So I just rewatched Encanto for the second time.
Yeah.
And I'm in love with the movie now. I love it.
Finally, I got you on board.
I know, I love it. I need my dad's Enchanted. We don't talk about Bruno. So Dolores is a 4-cost inkable and amethyst, 3 strength, 3 willpower, quest for 2. Her ability, magical informant. When you play this character, if an opponent has an exerted character in play, you may draw a card.
There's one thing about this card that makes it stand out big time in amethyst these days.
Is it the stats?
One thing about the stats that makes it stand out big time. Let's see if you have the same thought that I do. What is it that stands out about Dolores from all the other amethyst cards?
All the other amethyst cards.
Take your time.
Okay.
I'm kidding. Don't take your time.
She quests for 2?
Yes, she quests for 2.
That's what I missed. Okay, yeah. That's
everything else quests for 1. I think she's very strong because she has that ability to draw you a card like a Maleficent or a Rabbit. Mm-hmm. But she's also an early questing threat, whereas most of the other ones are all about building card advantage and taking care of board control. And she can actually put a lot of pressure on the board with that card advantage. So I think she's really good. I think she started to see a lot of play from that respect. I think it's really good. I don't think there's a ton more necessarily to say on that respect for this instance because she is going to get talked about more on the tier list.
Sure.
When we start going through that. So yeah, we'll go ahead and move on to the next one, which is news, what's on our mind, league recap, whatever. Yeah, it's been a crazy couple weeks, but I think the biggest thing is that, from my perspective, is I'm finally blinging out a deck. I mean, I know that's crazy to say, but I've Never really made a home, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I've kind of started to make that. And Michael, who was our guest last time, our guest in a couple episodes ago, we've gotten really close over the league weeks, and I think I say he, I know he's listening to this. We've been very bad influences on each other. I made the comment, I think I want to start blinging out my deck. And then he said, that's a great idea, or something along those lines, and then did it, and then started buying the cards. And so I blame him because he took the first step in actually purchasing some of the foils to bling out the deck, where I just made the comment, hey, this is something I think I finally want to start doing. And the reason is because on some of the Chapter 4 stuff I opened, I got a foil Brawl, I got a foil the 3-cost Inkable Sisu. I got a foil one of those rare ones. And so there was 3 or 4 of extra foils that I got that I put into my deck right away. And I was like, okay, great. So now it's starting to get, and I had 1 Hiram foil already in there and 1 foil Develop Your Brain, just random ones that I had extra of. But then it started to go. And then once that bug starts, then it really is I put it out there. And then he's like, all right, let's do it. And so we've been bad influences on each other, helping each other off the cliff of blinging out our decks.
So you're ready for some Fort Worth blinging out?
Yeah, I think I mean, Michael is way further along the line than I am.
Oh, wow.
Last I checked, or last he remember him telling me, he was just about halfway through blinging it out.
Ooh.
Which is insane. I think I'm at 17
And
cards.
what deck is he running at the moment?
He's going back and forth. I think he's did not have the fun of the Emerald Steel playstyle that he had with set 3. So I think he's trying to bounce around a little bit and figure it out. But I know he's gotten a lot of the Sapphire stuff because that's very universal these days. So
sure.
But yeah, I'm not near as far the way through he is. I think I'm like I said, 14 or 16 or 17 cards, and 4 of those are popsicles. That was the only purchase I've actually made to get towards that so far is 4 popsicles.
Hey, you know what? We're proud of you.
Everything else,
we're proud of you.
Everything else I already had, or am using the How Far I'll Go promos. I had those. From last set.
Interesting.
So I'm throwing those in there too. But anyways, yeah, that's what's on my mind. We haven't talked in forever. So what's on your Lorcana mind?
I mean, as far as I've just been looking at really just little pieces I could add because I'm running Emerald Steel. I did at the end of set 3, so naturally it just fit for me to transition when it's looking like one of the best decks in the game. And so I just been looking at what small changes, what can I streamline, what can I optimize. So really it's just been all around optimizing the deck.
Yep. I know you're an Emerald Steel guy and you're sticking with it. So it's obviously, I think, one of the top decks, and that definitely is going to be shown in the meta report as well.
The main thing, honestly, is Mulligan. That's been my number one thing I've been focusing on is Mulligan strategies.
It's very hard because there's so many different options.
So many play lines.
So many quick. It's not
especially if you're playing Deceiver of All. I know a lot of decks have cut that, but if you're playing Deceiver of All, it's even more complicated.
Yeah, there's a ton of lines for sure. So I agree. It can be kind of tedious, which is the way that I explained it to Michael. When I was playtesting and I was like, this is not something I want to do. It's very tedious. And so I to the good Emerald Steel players out there, kudos, because I can't do it.
Yeah, that's been my absolute main focus is Mulligan.
Yep. Okay. So with that said, these are always fun banter episodes. So let's go ahead and get into it. So for those of you who are listening on the audio version, we will go through each ink type and talk about all the cards and then give a quick recap after we finish each ink type. And so with that said, let's go ahead and jump into Amber. We have 5 cards. 2 of them I put together kind of just because they're the shift versions. I've got both Ursulas that were introduced in set 4, the 2-cost Singer and the 4-cost Uninkable. Gaston, Look at This Family, and Julieta Madrigal. So starting off with Gaston.
Okay. I think he was a... Are we going right now?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I think he was a very needed ramp. I think he's a way, obviously, with some of the bigger stuff we're going to get in with Ruby, which sometimes Amber Ruby is paired, or at least towards the beginning of the set.
Yeah.
I think it's a very nice way to get to those bigger stuff early.
I think I was definitely wrong about Gaston. I thought he would be kind of mid. But 4 health
4
early
willpower
on
is huge.
4 willpower is pretty tough to take off on one swoop, especially if you have a bodyguard or something in play, which there's not a ton of, but still you have that potential. And then jumping straight into a 6, which the only other way to really do that is through Sapphire Ramp. But it's really hard to evaluate this because in a vacuum, I think he's insane. In the current meta game and in the current meta state with all the ramp and all the Sapphire and all the removal, I think he's kind of garbage. So it's really hard.
He's really good against Emerald Steel. I'll say that. I think he's really good with that 4 willpower. I think he's really good against Emerald Steel.
I think he's really good against a lot of things because you can sneak out a Stitch Rockstar faster. You can sneak out your own Madame Medusa if you're playing the Amber Ruby. You can sneak out
Mulan.
Yeah, a lot of stuff quick. And so I think he's really good. Like I want to say a solid like A tier.
I was gonna say closer to B.
But it's really difficult. Okay, we can end him up then in like bottom A tier. But I think it's really difficult in general because I really want Amber Ruby to be like an insane deck. But I just think it just gets completely dumpstered by Sisu, which we'll get to in a minute. But it's very hard to put him anywhere else. I mean, I could probably maybe we do start B and we'll see how things go. But yeah, I think he's good. I just think in the current state of the meta, it's very tough.
Well, and I think that's going to be a really theme here through all this. Is like
that definitely will be a thing.
It's really going to be a strong theme. It's like it's good in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Currently, there's who knows.
There's a mountaintop. And that mountaintop is insanely better than everything else in the meta.
It's really steep mountaintop.
And this fits into everything else in the meta. But yeah, so we'll start Gaston B. Look at this family. I think this is also one that I was really wrong about. I think it's good, not great. I could say it being like a B or C tier. I think there's not a ton of card draw in the Amber Ruby realm. Obviously, the healing factor with Rapunzel is like the biggest way to get some card draw in Amber. But this is another cheat. It's weird saying cheap, but if you're using Gaston to sneak out a quick 6 cost, then you can sing this relatively early on. And so there's some synergies there for sure. I don't know. It's definitely playable, especially if you're in your Mufasa rank. Well, I guess not if you're playing Mufasa because then you're not trying to put non-character cards in there. But if you're on your Amber Ruby song deck, which I've spent some time playtesting, I think it's definitely playable. I don't think it's insane. So like BC, what are you thinking?
I think closer to C maybe.
Okay, we'll go C then for that.
I don't know. I might regret that one. Maybe B. I don't know.
I think this is one that gets better over time. I don't know. Again, I think the current meta is just stifling for it. But anyways. Okay, so Julieta. So speaking of Rapunzel, I purposely didn't say Julieta because you now have the Julieta card heal / draw with the self-damaging characters. I think she's really solid. I think she comes out a turn faster than Rapunzel, and so you could like turn 1 Milan, turn 2 Lady Gothel, turn 3 Julieta, turn 4 Rapunzel, and you've got a ton of big body cards and a ton of cards in your hand from all of those play lines. And so I think again there's a lot of synergies there and a lot of good like early game advantages. But again, I don't want to say this every time. I already am annoyed at myself for saying it again, but it's just in the current meta, it's trash. But I think A. Honestly, I think A.
She's one of my really personal favorite cards in the set.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can heal a Maui and give him another opportunity to challenge into something else and not die. Anytime you can heal, have another opportunity to just hit a healer in general. There used to only be 4 Rapunzels. Now you have 8 pseudo Rapunzels, which makes it a lot easier to just find that heal early on. So I think that respect as well makes it really good.
I completely agree.
Okay. Let's start with the 2 costs, Singer Ursula, the Singer 4. I really like this one. I've been trying my hardest on my spare time not playing my meta deck to get a Ruby Amber song deck to work. And she's like the biggest part of it.
Okay.
And one of that is because you play Into the Woods, which is like another pseudo Kita, strength debuff for Sisu to come in. A lot of people obviously talk about the Kita plus Sisu synergies. That to me is very, very, very slow because you have to have a ton of ink to play them on the same turn. But if you sing Into the Woods and then you play Sisu, you don't have to have all that much ink, especially without a Gaston out there. So I like her a lot. I think she's probably A tier as well. Anytime you can sing, what's the forecast song that I'm blanking on? That Long King Zeus. Yeah. Anytime you can sing Long King Zeus, like on turn 3, like that's insane. Anytime you can use a low cost card like that to get a ton of damage value on the board, that's going to be nutty. And so I really like Ursula.
Okay. Well,
do you disagree with that one?
I don't have any strong opinion on it, so I'll take that. But if you've got some play out of it, then I'll trust you. I
think it's good. Okay. What about the Floodborn Ursula?
So this one, I personally like it better.
Yeah, I think it's it being uninkable. Anytime it's got a much higher hurdle to cover. Yeah. Anytime it's uninkable, and so do I like the card better? Sure, but if it were inkable, I would definitely say that. With it being uninkable, I think that changed my opinion a tad bit.
So did you play this card in that song deck?
No. Okay. Just because the bare I just had bare necessities. I think there's an argument for either way. Again, this 4-cost Ursula is, I think, the first one. We haven't done a good job of talking about what all these do, have we? Man, we're really rusty here.
I haven't recorded in a while. It's been busy for me. So
okay, so we're gonna everybody, if Gaston, you can exert to get two lanterns. Look at this family lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and draw 2 cards. Ursula 2 is the Singer 4. Julieta lets you heal 2 damage and draw 1 card if you do. That covers all the abilities. So now moving forward will be better. Ursula, Eric's Bride, the Floodborn, has the ability that says whenever this character quests, chosen opponent reveals their hand and discards a non-character card of your choice. So it's a bare necessities, but it's every time they quest. So that's insane. I think, in today's meta, I think this actually fits extremely well because you have your Sapphire decks that are running just boatloads of items running rampant. And if you can just sit there and quest and just keep taking cards, that's really annoying. So it's a threat that has to be dealt with.
Yep.
It's a 4 cost or a 4 willpower, which is pretty good. Obviously at a 4 cost, it's not the best, but your idea here is to just keep ripping cards, and if they don't want to deal with it or they're just spending their time ramping, then they're just going to be in trouble forever. And so they have to answer this in some form or fashion. So again, I really like this one. The uninkability factor does hurt it a bit for me. I don't know. High B.
Yeah,
I think it's weird to say that, but I think high B is probably where we're at here.
I'll take it.
Okay, so that finishes up Amber. I almost did just the 2 Ursulas together, thinking they would just kind of be in pair, but the more I talked about it, the more I talked myself out of putting them there next to each other. So, so Amber recap here. We have Julieta Madrigal at A tier. We have Ursula, the non-Floodborn variant with the subtext of Vanessa, because she's, the normal Vanessa form, and A tier. And then B tier, you've got Ursula, the Floodborn, Eric's Bride, and then you've got Gaston. And then in C tier, you have Look at This Family.
All right.
Okay, moving on to Amethyst. We talked about Amethyst at length before the episode started, trying to figure out what cards to put in Amethyst. And we were kind of, scratching our heads a little bit. I'll just start there for that one.
There was one very easy one, and then the other 2 were... we only have 3 for this ink.
Yeah, I think there's... but honorable mentions... there's Belle, the accomplished mystic, which is the damage mover.
Personal favorite of mine.
Yeah, of mine as well. That I think there's a lot of potential there. Hasn't seen any play at all. You have the Brunos, the super rare version that has evasive that you can exert to get 3 lore if you name the right card at the top of your deck. I have seen him played a little bit, but again, I think from an actual meta and competitive perspective, probably not the strongest card. You've got Elsa, Storm Chaser.
Another personal favorite.
Probably, one of my favorite cards as well. I just haven't seen any actual, impact on the game yet. You've obviously got Ursula Queen, Sea Witch Queen, the big bad of the set. That is insane, but has seemingly been a little too slow for people to use.
Second Star to the right.
And then you have Second Star to the Right, which is absolute garbage.
I agree.
So, I think there's this is the weirdest one for me because it's there's something there in a ton of cards.
Yep.
but it just hasn't like really fully been vetted yet, I guess.
So I'm sure this will really age well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If we're wrong about something on this one, it's definitely going to be Amethyst because somebody's going to figure some of these cards out. Like I was looking at Flotsam and Jetsam the other day, and you said this early on. You're like, that card's insane. And I was like, oh, discarding 2 cards kind of sucks. But the more I think about it, it's like, if you discard a Broom and you discard a Trinity follower, it's like, okay, just get 2 cards back then and fine, whatever. You discarded them and you ended up with this massive body. That's insane. But it's still, I think kind of mid. So with that said, let's jump into these actual cards we picked, which the first one we want to talk about is Dolores, which was the card of the week, which is very fitting because it is one of the more solid cards. And as I mentioned earlier, I think the 2 lore pressure is a lot to deal with. In most of the Amethyst matchups, you're either, dealing with your opponent ramping, and so you're trying to get out to a fast start to try to put a bunch of pressure on so that your goats can finish your opponent off. It's, turned into very much more of an aggro deck. I think the evolution of Ruby Amethyst is something that needs to be studied.
True.
Because Chapter 1, Chapter 2, the big bad control deck. Like he had all of the big bad cards. You had Elsa, Heroic Outlaw,
Monstrous Dragon,
Elsa, Ursula from Chapter 1, Monstrous Dragon, all of the Ruby removal. And then in Chapter 3, last set, it was a little bit more mid-rangey. You had your Minnie Mouse, Surfer to try to get off to a quick start against some of the more control-y decks like your Ruby Sapphires and your Sapphire Steels. But you still had a little bit of those type, control cards, which I think the best list now still does. But Dolores is very much an aggro tool with a 2 cost or a 2 quester that you just don't really have in any of the other Amethyst cards, and so that's why I like her a lot. You get to draw a card if your opponent has a card exerted. So yeah, I like her a lot. I think B tier is like really solid. She gets 1 card. There's a little bit of caveat to her obviously getting the card with your opponent having to have an exerted character for you to draw that card. But that's going to happen most times, so it's not like something you really have to play around.
I'm B tier. I was thinking A tier. I think
she's not game changing.
But neither is Julieta, and she's an A tier.
I think she is. I think she gives your Mulan and your Mother Gothels like a lot more life. Like otherwise, with just Rapunzel, there could be turns where you play Mother Gothel and it just sits there for 6 turns. You're waiting to get healed. But again, I think there's just a little bit more. I mean, we can put her top B then. I think Gaston's probably a little bit better.
I think she's just a really nice piece.
But I think the consistency that you get from Dolores, is probably there. So yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, we can maybe revisit that one too. I think it's just one of those like really solid pieces.
I agree.
It's nothing crazy, but it's another really solid piece. It's inkable, which can be at a problem with some of the Amethyst stuff these days, which is shocking to be said because it's usually an Emerald conversation. But yeah, I think it's a really solid card. I think it's definitely like a 2 or 3 of in a lot of decks. And yeah, it's going to get you value. So,
I mean, like you said, I really like its overall package. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, Peter Pan Shadow Chaser.
Shadow Finder.
Shadow Finder. Is it not Chaser? It is Finder. I don't know where it came up with Chaser. So this is the 3 cost uninkable, which is very much in the same vein as Peter Pan's Shadow from Chapter 2, I believe.
It's 4 cost uninkable.
Yeah, but so the difference here is it's basically the same, except it's kind of in reverse. This character has Russian Evasive, just like Peter Pan's Shadow. But the difference is his last ability is your characters with evasive get Rush, whereas the Shadow, it's all of them with Rush get Evasive. I don't feel like that has a ton of value. I don't feel like your evasive characters you're trying to rush into challenge. Like Minnie Mouse Surfer's not going to be one that you're trying to play to get rushed.
I mean, they've made a lot of those cards that are challenging evasive, and that hasn't seen much play. So
yeah, I think the big thing here is just the straight up the cost and stat line. The 3 cost 2/3 is the perfect Diablo counter, and I think that's what I've seen that most be included for. It's just like I need another way to deal with Diablo early, and this does that, and it lives, and it's evasive, and so if you want to deal with it, if you want to run your own Pegasus into it, or you want to run something else into it, then fine. But the stat line's pretty solid, so. This is a good one. Again, it's not like the most insane card ever, but it's a really solid piece. I think this is probably like B tier.
I think that's fine. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's a little high. Maybe not. You know what? I'm gonna peg it.
I
I'm gonna
agree.
take it down a peg
C2.
just because it's uninkable. If it was inkable, this
I
would be
agree.
this
I
might
agree.
even be a solid A tier if it was inkable.
Yeah.
But uninkable definitely gets C tier. I'm glad you agree on that one. Okay, last one for Amethyst here. We have one of the mini brooms of the set. We've got the 1 cost broom, which I think
Illuminary
is
Keeper.
the most the Illuminary Keeper broom, the 1 cost inkable 1/2, has the nice and tidy ability that says whenever you play another character, you may banish this character to draw a card. So just another one of those early churn characters to keep your, create some board pressure, get a little bit of lore pressure by questing, and then banish, and then it kind of banishes itself off, and you get a card from it.
Did you do that on purpose? Early churn characters?
I actually didn't, but that is truly what it is. Like the Chernobog's followers, it's just a character that sits there and churns itself over, because you kind of want it to get banished.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of want to banish it yourself so that you can get more cards in your hand. Because again, that's what Amethyst's kind of MO is at this time, is card advantage. But yeah, again, nothing special about this one. Is this B or C tier?
C. I just thought it was as a worthy inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, it's played. It's like like we were really grasping at straws here for Amethyst playable cards, but it is played. It is in a lot of these earlier lists. Getting the 1 cost out there for a snake bounce, if that's your only 2 cost play at the time, is really important. So I think it, again, gives you a lot of advantage earlier on the board. Gives you the opportunity to quest early and to regain that card from it. Just gives you a lot of flexibility. So. Okay, that's a fast Amethyst, but again, we were really grasping at straws here. So we've got Dolores Madrigal in B, and then in C tier, we've got Magic Broom and Peter Pan Shadowfinder. So,
Sorry, Amethyst.
As
my old favorite.
I was about to say, as an old Amethyst stan, it's the time to move on. I think
on the official Lorcana Discord server, I just recently changed my color from Amethyst to Emerald, like officially.
Dang, so you did break up.
Oh,
wow, okay.
It was messy.
Well, as we go here, we're getting into Emerald, and let's go ahead and just start with the big gun because there's going to be a discussion. Emerald obviously got a ton of tools. Emerald is continually getting stronger and stronger.
To be completely honest, I think there's even some that could have made this list even bigger for them.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. I mean, the crazy thing about Emerald, and we were saying this before we started as well, is there are just so many options. I think there's a lot of different techs you could build. You got like honorable mentions. You've got Cricky. You've got the Diablo 1 cost. You've got Hey. You've got I've got both of the Pegasus on the list.
Under the Sea, I think, deserves even a mention.
Under the Sea, I think its deck is still a little meh, but in general, I think, Under the Sea is very, very interesting. Hidden Cove is seeing a lot of play. I'm not a huge fan of Hidden Cove, but I know a lot of people are. The Prince Philip stuff, which is a little expensive, unfortunately. The Muses. So yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of different like lines that you can go through and different builds that you can get. I mean, it's getting very dynamic in a sense where you used to only see steel kind of be that way.
Yep, I agree.
But the 4 we chose to go with are Diablo, Pegasus 1 cost, Pegasus shift target, and we don't talk about Bruno. And so let's go ahead and dive into this one because this one's going to be fun. So hot take, Diablo is very mid, like very, very, very mid. And before everybody freaks out, if you're listening, don't freak out. Let me give you my explanation here before you turn off the pod and never listen again. In a vacuum, by itself, again, some of these cards we've talked about, it's like, well, in the current metagame, it's not very good. Obviously, in the current metagame, Diablo is insane. I'm not saying Diablo is not in the current meta and in the current state of the game. He is insane. If you take away the Ursula Deceiver and you take away like some of the other card options that like support Diablo, like a Bucky, I think it's very mid. I think you get value from it being played with Bucky, and I think you get value of it from it being played with Ursula. Without those two things, Steel would be extremely rampant in the meta and just be taking out every Diablo that ever gets played. And so from that respect, it's very mid. From the current meta, it's very high. So where do you rank that? I don't know.
S tier.
No. I know you're going to say...
It is 100% S tier, dude. So you're saying... Okay, we're going to skip a little bit here. Where's Sisu?
S tier.
Because of Ice Block.
No, I always ink my Ice Block. I rarely use my Ice Block.
That's...
I know. I have text message receipts of conversations about my Sisu deck, and I say
I ink Ice Block most of the time.
I know we're jumping ahead, but
Diablo,
again, I'm not saying Diablo.
You're doing that with Fishbone and Quill, so we're clear, right?
With what? Fishbone and Quill?
You're inking Ice Block with Fishbone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yes,
we're not cheating.
Sure.
Okay, there's again. I have two rankings. If you want to put him S, fine. In my mind, his S ranking will be because of the current metagame and because of the supporting characters of cards that he has around him. If we're talking just the card alone, with no supporting cast, no supporting cards, no supporting tools, it's very B. He gets taken out by every spell. He gets taken out by every song. He gets taken out by every removal card.
But he just doesn't, though.
He does.
But
if I see a Diablo, he's dead. Straight up gone. He's dead. He's dead. He's dead.
And why?
Brawl.
And why?
Brawl.
No. I understand. But why is he instantly dead? Because he is a S tier threat. You can't disagree with me on that.
No, I don't.
You can't.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair. He is a big threat. You can't just leave him around. And I'll put him in S tier because I know that we'll lose half of our listener base if I don't.
Okay. I totally see your side of things, and that makes complete sense. But I think there have been other beast S tiers in the meta in the past that have been that way also.
The difference is, though, in this sense, the difference is, you're right, there have been other threats in the past that have explicitly required immediate removal. The difference is he just gets removed. Like, he just gets removed. The other threats, like, they have to have very specific removal packages for that to happen. You know, like a Beast Tragic Hero, at the time, you had to have Medusa. Like, you had to have it. That was the card that took him out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now there's Along Came Zeus and a few other things, and like Ice Block plus Brawl or whatever, and there's a bunch of other things. But the point is, with 2 strength, 2 willpower, he just dies to everything. And so, again, I'm being very divisive here. I'm not trying to be. Because he is an insane card, and he, for this set and this meta, deserves to be S tier.
I agree. So here's the thing. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. To be completely honest, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I just think it's still a 4 in every deck, though. Even said that, you know, like having said that, it's still 4 in every deck.
Yeah, that's because you have to, you know, the threat and the card draw is necessary. I mean, everybody's moved on from Prince John for draw power to Diablo. So, okay. So let's go 1 cost Pegasus first.
Okay.
Honestly, this is one of my more favorite cards in the set. I mean, he's a solid A tier. This one honestly scares me a little bit more than Diablo in a lot of ways, because you don't really want to commit the resources to take him out because you know of the other stuff coming. But if you don't, then he just sits there questing, and before you know it, you're at your opponent's at 7 or 8 lore, and it's like, something's got to happen here. So Pegasus Gift for Hercules is the 1 cost.
Did we even mention Diablo's ability?
1/1 evasive. No, we didn't. So everybody knows Diablo. If you're listening to this podcast, you know Diablo. It's when exerted. Every time your opponent draws a card, you get to draw a card as well.
It's also evasive.
And it's evasive, yes. But Little Pegasus, it is wild how annoying he can be.
So evasive.
1/1 quests for 1. But again, it's in a vacuum, it's a fine card. But in the current meta, it's an insane card. And so it's like, how do you do it? I mean, he's high A for me. Like, insanely high A.
I agree. And obviously, it's a shift target for something else.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about the big Pegasus now because he's really insane too. The Pegasus Cloud Racer shifts for 3, which again, I think in the current meta is just insanity. You being able to play Pegasus 1, Bucky 2, Pegasus 3 shift is just insane. Then you can even quest with Bucky because his ability says when you play this character, if you shift to play him, your characters gain evasive until the start of your next turn. So everything becomes not, a lot less liable to be challenged. And so it's just, yeah, honestly, I think this card is much better than Diablo. Like, just as a card in a vacuum, it's way better.
Interesting.
Like, these ones scare me way more because the evasive is very hard to deal with. There's not a ton of characters or cards that deal very well with evasion.
But Diablo's evasive.
But he's 2 strength, 2 willpower. And so that opens the floodgates to what can deal with him.
Okay.
It goes from brawl.
But I mean, Ice Block Brawl on Pegasus.
Yeah, and you can do that, but again, that's a lot of resources you're dedicating to do that.
Okay.
Brawling Diablo is very different than Ice Block brawling Pegasus. You have to find the Ice Block, you have to find the time to play Ice Block, you have to find Brawl, you have to, not use your Flavisham on your Ice Block so that you can draw more cards, which you usually need to do. So anyways, I to me, this is another A tier. And yeah,
they're interchangeable.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it a little bit lower than the other one just because it's a higher cost. But the shift, it's insane. The ability's insane. Evasion's insane. Quest for 2 is insane. All around, just that a really, really, really.
Now, would you say you have to play him by shifting, or is he good on his own too?
No, you don't have to. I think again, given the current Bucky meta, you definitely want to to get all of the value out of Bucky you can, but you don't have to by any means. The crazy thing is, this last Emerald card might be my favorite Emerald card. Like, genuinely.
I mean, yeah, it's difficult. Okay, it's difficult, but yes, I agree.
So, We Don't Talk About Bruno is probably the most insane song right now. Return chosen character to their player's hand, then that player discards a card at random.
5-cost inkable.
5-cost inkable. The craziest thing about this is most of the time when this is played, your opponent doesn't have a hand.
Yes.
And so you're discarding whatever it is that you're deciding to.
You're banishing it for. It's a Dragonfire inkable.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, it really is.
But singable.
Yeah, and singable too, which is just even more insane. It's really, really, really good. There's obviously Emerald's strategy these days is to just deplete your opponent of resources. And so since that's the already strategy, having a card that plays into said strategy just isn't a massive fit, and something that has as much value as We Don't Talk About Bruno that fits into that strategy is insanity. So,
can I be completely honest with you?
Yeah, go for it.
I really want to put this in S tier, like really badly.
I think you have to think of the overall picture. Like, you have, like, in a vacuum, what it does alone is A tier. If you want to talk about the current metagame, everything else.
I'll make a deal with you. I'd be willing to bring Diablo down if Bruno gets S tier.
Whoa. I don't know how much else is going to be an S tier. Well, let's leave it A. Okay. I think not every time you deploy it, it's going to be where your opponent doesn't have an empty hand.
Yeah, I agree.
You can't force your opponents into that. There's a lot of card draw. There's a lot of ways around Diablo, blah, 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 blah. I think that fact is what keeps it in A tier. So, but with that said, we finished Emerald and we have Diablo at S tier. We Don't Talk About Bruno, Pegasus, and Pegasus at A tier. Like, has Emerald made the turnaround of the century? Or if you were to tell us in chapter 1 or like early stages of chapter 2, chapter 1 was, Emerald was still kind of playable and
Cusco.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going around. But in chapter 2, like early games of chapter 2, like 6 months ago, and you said, hey, your self from the future just came and told you that in the beginning of Sat 4 that Emerald has the most insane cards, and it is one of the best ink colors. Hey, I'd be like, you're crazy.
This little squirrel dude is gonna be insane.
The little squirrel dude that just came out that you're looking at, that's like, oh, that's kind of cute. Yeah, he annoys the crap out of everybody.
Honestly,
there's a petition online to get him banned.
He might have deserved a spot on this tier list, to be completely honest.
I mean, he's what makes all this work.
Yeah.
Like, with all of this works because of that. I mean, the shift 3 Pegasus is so insane because of Bucky. The new Aladdin card, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is even more insane because of Bucky.
Diablo, like Bucky, also Floodborn.
The ability to start discarding your opponent's hand on 3 is just really, really, really annoying.
Nutty.
Okay, so yeah, we recapped Emerald there. Let's move on to Ruby. We have a lot on here, and one of them I kind of threw in just for the memes because I'm showing myself up here anyways. But anyways, so first one, Flynn Rider, Frenemy. This is the biggest tool that Ruby Amethyst got. Bar none, it's the best card in the Ruby Amethyst deck. It's the most important card in the Ruby Amethyst deck, especially depending on the matchup against any of the Sapphire decks. This is a solid A tier for me. Like, I'm like even high A tier. Like encroaching on S tier. Ruby Amethyst is dead without this card.
I agree.
Dead as a doornail.
That's fair. I mean, I think it deserves. It's hard for me to put it because of bias. It's hard for me to put it above Pegasus, but I mean, I can live with it.
Card Ruby Amethyst.
Did you say what it does?
No, I did not. I'm. It's like this is my first episode ever recording a podcast or something. Flynn Rider, Frenemy, the 2-cost inkable, 2/2 stat line, 1 lore. But his ability says at the start of your turn, if you have a character in play with more strength than each opposing character, gain 3 lore. It doesn't say other character in play. It just says if you have a character in play. So that could be this Flynn, which again, if you're playing a Sapphire deck and all Sapphire tries to do their first 4 turns is ramp, they don't have a card on the board. Yeah. And so this card can be that card with more strength. And so he quests twice. He gets 3 lore twice. I've seen plenty of games where Flynn alone has 8 lore attributed to him in 3 turns.
That's insane. That's insane.
So, again, I said this earlier. Ruby Amethyst has had a very big makeover. It went from a control beast to a pretty control-y mid-range deck.
It's a bit, you know what it
and
is?
Now
it's kind of tempo.
Deck.
It's kind of tempo.
I think it's very aggro-y. I think you play
but
whatever.
You're still playing Medusa, though.
Yeah, but that's just... I don't think you have to play Medusa. I think it's very aggro in the sense of turn 1, whatever you want. Turn 2, Flynn. Turn 3, bounce. Turn 1 with Fox. And then you've got 4 strength on there. If you need a Maui to come out to have more strength, then play a Maui. And every turn you're getting 3 lore. And then the castle, not a lot of people are taking cards to deal with locations anymore. So turn 1, whatever. Turn 2, Flynn. Turn 3, a lot of people are playing the 3-cost inkable Sisu. Turn 4, castle. Like, you just can't deal with it. And It's all around this engine. And so, yeah, it's one of my favorite cards of the set. It's one of the most insane cards of the set for sure.
I mean, yeah, I can't disagree.
But okay, so yeah, Flynn is a solid A tier. I even might want to put I'm gonna put him top A tier. Top A tier.
Don't put
stop me
above Bruno.
Stop me.
I am.
Stop
don't.
Me. You don't have the mouse. You can't stop me. Fine, we'll put it back. Okay, Mulan, Elite Archer. This is a weird one too because in a vacuum, I'm putting her S tier all day long. In the current meta, is she D tier? I said it. Yep, said it. Is she D tier?
That's ridiculous, dude.
I'm not gonna say D tier because she's not worse than like these cards we haven't seen, like the Magic Broom or Peter Pan. I'm gonna go C tier. She's just passive. Like I talked in our in a week or in one of our most recent episodes or one of our recent episodes on the Chicago recap and Atlanta preview or Atlanta recap Chicago preview. I talked about me playing in and winning one of the local Win-A-Box tournaments. I thought about it after that tournament was over. I think I challenged, like I was the one actively challenging 3 times in 6 games. Like 6 rounds. So 12 matches. Like 3 times. Like everything you do in the Ruby removal, it's all active. It's all Medusa, Tremaine, Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, Sisu. So there's just like no room to challenge in that deck. Like everything's just getting removed before you even need to challenge.
I agree with that. I think her spot will be once Ruby Amber gets optimized. That'll be her spot. I don't think she was ever a natural fit for Ruby.
No, and I'm not saying, and she wasn't either. So, but my point is that it's just a very passive removal on somebody has to do something first before you can remove them. And so she's definitely very much more in the Amber Ruby range than the Ruby Sapphire range. And Amber Ruby being not very great right now is definitely a detriment to that.
Also, I could see her getting in Ruby Amethyst with like a Pinocchio talkative puppet where you can exert chosen character.
Yeah.
Also get played in something like that. I think she's one of those legendaries. I think she's... We talked about it in set 2 of this tier list where it was Mufasa. I think she's the Mufasa of this set. She'll find a place.
I mean, the card in a vacuum is insane. Like it's absolutely insane. Nuts. Maybe the best. Maybe the best in the set. Does. Probably the best in the set. Like if you're just looking on paper, the stats, the abilities, probably the best of the set.
You want to say what it does?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Okay. Let's go ahead and actually talk about what the cards do before we get like super into it. So she's got like 3 abilities,
you passed it.
which is the most nuts part. Elite Archer shifts for 5. Straight shooter. When you play this character, if you use shift to player, she gets +3 strength this turn, and then triple shot during your turn. Whenever this character deals damage to another character in a challenge, deal the same amount of damage to up to 2 other chosen characters.
6 cost thinkable, 2/6 quest for 2.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really off my game today.
We got you.
Yeah, it's just the stats, the abilities, everything best in the set for sure. It's very passive. It has 2 strength, so it gets removed by absolutely everything. It just currently doesn't have a place in the current metagame. But it's
okay.
It's still one of my favorite cards.
That hurts.
It does. But we're gonna get to another one that's just in the same spot too. Wow, we're 45 minutes in. We gotta wrap this up here. And we're only halfway through. Okay, Sisu. I'm actually gonna say the stats this time because I remembered. So the baby Sisu, as I like to say, the emboldened warrior, the 3-cost inkable version of Sisu, 1 strength, 4 willpower, quests for 2, and has the ability this character gets +1 strength for each card in opponent's hands. So again, if you're playing Ruby Amethyst, and you're early on in the game, this is going to have a ton of strength for you to activate your Flynn from. It's a good shift target for Sisu, obviously, as well. And then it's a good challenger, in a lot of situations too. It's a whole new world deterrent.
B tier, I think.
B tier. Yeah, I could see it being A, but A is getting full here, so we'll go solid B. It's definitely one of my favorite new Ruby cards. But okay, now we got to the big Sisu.
So
the empowered sibling, 8-cost uninkable, 5/4 stat line, quests for 3, and says whenever you play this character, banish all opposing characters with 2 strength or less.
Also a shift 6. Shift 5?
Shift 6.
Okay.
The absolute aggro destroyer. Yeah. One-sided B prep for aggro decks, one-sided B prep for emerald decks, one-sided B prep for early game, anything where you're trying to run low to the ground. Mm-hmm. It takes it all out. So it's
easy S tier to me.
Yeah. I mean, this is an S tier one. This is, I think, my favorite card of the set. It decimates, early game, early or quick decks, and, control decks obviously get ran over by quick decks usually. But now you can just turbo ramp to 6 and then shift and then decimate the game, and then the game's over at that point. So there's not a ton to say there. I mean, genuinely, I'm kind of trying to hurry a little bit here, so we're not here for 4 hours talking about this. But
yep.
Yeah, I mean, she's just insane.
I agree.
Okay, I'll let you talk about Brawl since I'm here, just sitting here yapping for 6 hours.
No, it's
taking forever. So Brawl, last Ruby card.
So 3-cost, inkable, action, banish chosen character with 2 strength or less.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple.
2 strength or less hits so many important characters, though. Belle, Strainsby Special, Hiram Flaversham, Diablo,
Deceiver of All.
Ursula, Deceiver of All, which is a big one, too. Those are probably the biggest targets in today's game. But, if it's just the note, it not being a song is shockingly... Ariel, Spectacular Singer, it hits her too. It being an action and not a song is shockingly in his favor. With all the Ursula Deceivers running around and you needing early game removal, that really actually helps you in the sense that it can't get ripped by Ursula Deceiver, and it can't cause you to not be able to remove the Diablo, remove the Ursula Deceiver of All, or remove whatever that early Rapunzel. I'm just scrolling through here real quick to see what other early game threats are being played that you can deal with. Pongo, which isn't being played a ton, but Evasive is really annoying to deal with.
Minnie
Mouse Surfer, Cinderella, Ballroom Sensation. I mean, the list goes on and on. Arthur isn't seeing a ton of play these days. Merlin Rabbit, Peter Pan's Shadow, Pinocchio Talkative Puppet, Pinocchio Star Attraction. The list goes on and on. The point is that Brawl on paper doesn't seem to be insane, but the amount of targets it hits that are really, really important to hit is a very, very long list.
A tier?
This is S tier in my book.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
I know it's crazy to say that, but the reason is because, again, without Brawl, the amount of early game problems that you would have in a Ruby Sapphire or Ruby Amethyst game is a lot.
I agree.
It solves a ton of issues for you. Okay. Ariel. Okay. Ruby recap real quick. We have our first 2 S tier that might, I don't know if that's the first time we've ever put 2 from the same ink in S tier, but we've got Sisu.
I think
in Brawl.
Set 3 had 2 Emerald.
Set 3 had 2. Oh yeah, you're right.
Both Ursulas.
And then we got Flynn Rider in A tier. We've got Sisu again, the baby Sisu shift target in B tier, and Mulan in C tier. Okay. Moving on to Sapphire.
This one should be pretty fast.
Kicking off with a banger. Yeah, Sapphire's really fast, but we're kicking off with a banger here. Ariel Treasure Collector. Honestly, I really want to put this S tier too. It has ward. I know. I was actually going to remember that. I was actually going to remember this time. The 6 cost uninkable, 3/4 stat line, quests for 3, has ward, which I think right now is the most important ability. And if we were doing an abilities tier list, ward might be at the top for me right now. Given the current meta, it might be at the top. And then it has the ability that says when you have more items in play than each opponent, this character gets +2 lore. So, a 5 quester in a lot of games, you're obviously playing this in an items deck. And so I think more times than not, you are getting that 5 lore. And even if you aren't, it's not like a 1 or 2 like your Bell and your Tamatoa. It has a good baseline to start from. It being uninkable maybe moves it down to A tier for me. What do you think?
I don't think it's S. I do think it's A. Okay. Although, let me say this. 6 cost inkable, that's obviously kind of a big ask, right? But if it's played, one of the biggest threats in the game.
Doesn't get removed by Medusa, doesn't get removed by Sisu, doesn't get removed by Brawl, doesn't get removed by Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, doesn't get removed by Dragonfire, doesn't get removed by anything but Tremaine, and the only way to Tremaine it is by it being the only card on the board. Obviously, be prepared and be king and a couple other ones, but there are obviously downsides to all of those too. The only way to remove it is a conditional removal. So it's insane. I really, really, really like this card. I know some Sapphire Steel lists have started to cut her. I don't think I would ever do that.
I don't think I ever would either.
Okay, Scuttle. I think Scuttle at the very beginning, everybody was freaking out about. I think he's highly overrated now.
I agree.
I think he's a solid C tier, like even mid C tier, just because you either, if you don't find your ramp early on, then, you're taking another turn out of the way to get that ramp, or you can just kind of play the hand out and get to the important cards that you need anyways. He can find a dime late game, sure, but I think it's just very, very, very situational, and his, once he's on the board, he's just kind of a dead card. I mean, the 1/3 stat line isn't really doing you anything.
Yeah.
There's not very many songs aside from one jump that you're wanting to sing. And if you had one jump, I think you're probably playing that on 2 versus a Scuttle anyways. So yeah, Scuttle's a solid C tier in my book. Okay, Ice Block. Where do we put Ice Block? I mean, is this again, in a vacuum, it's really not that great, but
I don't even know if it's the best item of this set is the thing.
I don't know. Maybe not.
I don't know.
It's definitely not S. It could be A, but honestly, I think it's B. I think it's highest.
I agree.
Which is weird to say, but there are a lot less scenarios than you think that need to be used.
I think it was towards the beginning, it was an easy way to add the 3 cost uninkable Sisu banish.
Yeah, and that's what I was using it early on too, but I cut that Sisu from my list.
Which, would you mind explaining what Ice Block does for us?
Yeah, thank you. Ice Block is the 1 cost uninkable item that says you can exert to remove 1 strength from chosen character.
Yeah, it's B.
I genuinely, I rarely actually use it to activate to do it. The only, the biggest target in my mind that this is good for is Medusa Tink. Maybe you're wanting to do it on Sisu so that something goes from 3 strength to 2 strength and gets removed too. But that doesn't happen insanely often. So yeah, honestly, I think it's great. I think it's a big threat. I think it definitely makes your opponent rethink what they're trying to play, but it's not the best card of all time. I'm not even going to talk about Great Stone Dragon. I thought threw it in there because we needed another card, and I kind of thought it was a meme. It's a D tier card. I think I have seen it played. I guess I'll say what it is real quick. Great Stone Dragon, it says, this item enters play exerted. But then at the start of your turn, you can obviously it readies itself, and then you can exert to put character card from your discard into your inkwell face down and exerted. I still think there's potential there, but there's just no room in current lists for it. I really, really like it. For late game ramp, you're not taking cards out of your deck that are very valuable because you don't want to deck yourself, but you can continue to. Anyways, I think there's potential there, and I really like the thought of it. I just it's a weird one.
We needed some sort of D tier.
Yeah, that's true. We did need a D tier too. So from that regard, okay. Ruby or Sapphire recap. We've got Ariel in A tier. We've got Ice Block in B tier. We've got Scuttle in C tier, and we've got Great Stone Dragon in D tier. All right. Lastly but not least, we've got steel.
That's kind of least. It's.
I don't think
Sapphire's definitely least, but
no. Oh well, sapphire and amethyst too.
Oh, amethyst is
like
least.
I think this on it like these cards might be second best. Like this, no third. This is definitely third best.
Okay, I wasn't thinking straight.
I would say emerald.
Amethyst is definitely
emerald, ruby, steel for like the cards that like ranking the cards this set. Okay. Anyways, first one is Aladdin. This is another one that honestly, especially depending on the deck you're playing, incredibly annoying and requires immediate removal. So he has the Floodborn Aladdin too. There is the 1/3 vanilla, but the Floodborn, the Brave Rescuer, is a 3-cost inkable 3/3 stat line. Quests for 1, but he's very much in the same vein as the Ursula Floodborn that we chose. That says whenever this character quests, you may banish chosen item. If you're playing a Sapphire deck, this is your worst nightmare.
Yep, I agree.
Like genuinely your worst nightmare. So,
and I mean, otherwise it's pretty unusable, but
no, because an Emerald is still a Floodborn, and with Bucky, it's a 3-cost. It's a 3-cost.
Good point.
Inkable Floodborn for Bucky.
If you don't pull any others, yeah.
I mean, yeah, obviously you got Diablo, and you've got like a Pegasus shift line, you've got a Robin Hood shift line, but if you don't have any of those, then you are kind of at Aladdin's mercy. But again, anytime you have even later in the game, like if you've got one Bucky on board with 6 ink and you play an Aladdin and a Diablo and you discard 2 cards turn 6, that's insane too. I think you're right. I think the item thing is obviously situational given the current metagame.
But he's got 3/3 stats is pretty good for Steel Emerald, to be honest. Like,
solid B. I'm even hesitant to not put him A.
B, I think A's too full. I mean, I want to move some of the A's down a little bit. Like,
yeah, let's go ahead and move Ursula down.
I think even Julieta deserves to come down.
Okay, let's go Julieta top.
And then Aladdin can go up.
Aladdin goes up?
Yeah.
I know.
She's not being played, bro. She's not.
But Aladdin, we'll go like that then. We'll keep them both B because Aladdin, you're right. Like if you're playing a Sapphire deck, he's in S tier. If you're not playing a Sapphire deck, he's C tier, and so somewhere in the middle there then, depending on that. So okay, Aladdin B tier. All right, now we've already dumpstered my top card of the initial preview. Now we get to Sonic Warrior, your top card,
which it goes in a tier below the Mulan, I think.
Ooh, I'm not gonna put it in Greystone Dragon territory. I'll put it at the bottom of the tier.
I think it goes D. It does.
It's just because Song's dead. If Song was still alive,
I don't even know she be played in Song.
I tried Song.
I played her in my Song.
I played her in my Song deck. I played her in my Song deck. Because if you're playing Lanterns with Phil and Ariel, then like you have the ink to play her and to sing and to get the damage from her ability, which I will talk about and I won't forget. So Ariel Sonic Warrior has an ability that says when you play a song, you may pay 2 ink to deal 3 damage to chosen character. She's at 6 cost, shifts for 4, 3/8 stat line, cannot be dismissed, and then quests for 2. So if you're playing her on turn 5, or shifting her on turn 5, and then using Lanterns to shift, and then using the rest of your ink to get the extra damage, is she great in the current meta? No, she's not. But there's definitely potential there where I think she gets revitalized at some point through some form or fashion.
Yeah.
But I also say that, and there needs to be an episode at some point. It's like, is there ever going to be any late game deck that has nothing to do with Ruby? Because every late game deck at this point has to deal with Ruby, because Ruby just removes everything. So, anyways, story for another time. Fortisphere. It's basically Pop 2.0, or as I call it.
Steel Pop, yep.
It's basically just a Steel Popsicle 2.0. It has the ability that says exert for 1 ink, banish this item, chosen character of yours gains bodyguard until the start of your next turn. So I've seen it used a little bit, but getting to this last card, I think that's a lot less needed at these days. Is this just A tier? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's not the it's usually just drawn from, but I mean, Fortisphere, another Popsicle. Popsicle is insane. Everybody knows that. You just anytime it replaces itself, and then you can have fodder for Hiram. It's nutty.
I want to be completely honest. This seems like kind of maybe the laziest design card yet.
Why?
I just think it's almost like And I know there's been other instances of this, but like of an S tier top card, it's like, oh yeah, let's just make another one in a different color. Like obviously we have other examples.
It's just the way that people use it, though. Like, I mean, if you think about the character that gives bodyguards more lore, is that in this set or the last set?
It's the legendary Mickey, right?
No, it's I'm thinking the bear. I think it's set 3.
Oh, John.
Yeah, Little John. Little John, where it's all bodyguard characters like get +1 lore, I think. Yeah, it's from last set. It says, while this character is exerted, your characters with bodyguard gain resist +1 and +1 lore. So like, I think there's a world where you actually use that ability to do something. We're just like not considering the abilities. Like it's just a card that replaces itself, and that's because that's the way it's used. But if you look at like what it actually does, then no, it's not a duplicate. But I obviously get your point because that's how it's used. Okay, last one, Chin Po.
I love this card.
Chin Po is a 5-cost inkable 4/7 bodyguard. The 7 willpower is a massive benefit because he survives a Maui attack.
He's honestly like, I mean, he plays like a location that damages. To be completely honest,
but he's a bodyguard. Like that's
like he's incredible to me.
Yeah, it's a really good card. I think the reason he got overlooked initially was just because it's kind of vanilla on paper, but the 7 willpower that can survive a Maui attack,
and it's a 5-drop,
is nuts, and it can sing everything. Yeah, so surviving Maui is important because normally it's like you play a bodyguard, something takes that bodyguard out, and then you get Maui'd, but you can't even Maui the bodyguard to get through the bodyguard in one turn. Like you have to 2-hit something into it to get through it to then Maui or take out whatever the actual target is. And with
that 4 strength, we'll probably take out that second one too. So
I mean this is solid B for me. Like solid B.
I mean,
it's not A, it's just a vanilla bodyguard, but I think again,
I don't know.
You're telling me it's as good as Pegasus or Flynn?
No.
Yeah, I mean, again, like on paper, I really want it to be that good, but it's just a vanilla bodyguard.
It's really hard. Like, I would say it's as hard to take Pegasus off the board as it is this.
You're correct, but the thing you're forgetting is, again, I kind of already talked about this, that most of the Ruby cards don't care about bodyguards. In the Win-A-Box tournament I had to deal with Chin Po in 3 separate matches, and I just didn't care. I had Brawl. I had Madame Medusa. I had Lady Tremaine. I had all the stuff that was like, I don't even really care about your Chin Po there because I'm just going to deal with it. Like all your other stuff. And so, again, current meta, love the card. Love that he survives Maui. We have a very almost perfect like normal distribution here as well.
All right.
So I think it works.
Go through the steel.
Quick wrap up on steel and quick wrap up on the episode because we just hit an hour. Fortisphere A tier. We have Aladdin, Floodborn, and Chin Po in B tier. And then Ariel, Sonic Warrior in C tier. So I feel good about this in general. I am glad we moved a couple of those A tier ones down. Yeah, so I guess quick wrap up on some of the stuff we moved around. We moved Julieta and Ursula that were in A tier and Amber down
Ursula
to Vanessa down to B tier. Because A tier was kind of getting a little top heavy there, which neither one of us really liked. But yeah, I think this is a solid one. I like the normal distribution. I think most of these cards should be good, not fantastic. Diablo being S tier's, troll, but we'll leave it there.
It's Christmas up there in S tier.
It is. It's red and green. Okay, I feel like I kind of torched the last couple of those colors because I was trying to catch up for yapping way too much.
But they were lesser-ish ones. It's okay. They didn't need much explaining.
Yeah, and again, if you listened to this and I did a terrible job explaining what these cards were and you didn't know what they did pre-hand, then I'm very sorry. I tried to do a good job, but I don't know what was in my mind today. I thought I was on my game, but clearly I was very off my game today.
Hey, it is what it is, dude. We've all been there. But hopefully, this list stands the test of time.
Well,
it won't.
At like set 5, we need to do an episode that's reaction to our tier lists and like go through how bad our tier lists were. That I think we need to like actually write that down and do that. That's a fun one. That's a fair one. But anyways, yeah. So what do you think about the tier list? Let us know in the comments, or like I'm sure I'll have a question for the tier list on Spotify if you're listening on Spotify, and you can react to it that way. But I love doing these. Shockingly, we only really had Diablo as the big, kind of divider between us.
That's good. We're both on the same level then. That's good.
Everything else, yeah, we kind of were even on. But yeah, everyone, as always, thanks for listening. I say that all the time, but genuinely, because we genuinely are very thankful for all the support and everything. So we'll catch you next time. So thanks for listening, and catch you then.
Bye, guys.